Okay, so we just left off with calculating euros on our revenue spreadsheet, and we worked on two things. One was locking cell and one was naming cells. Remember, we could lock our reference to the exchange rate by putting dollar symbols in front of the column and row headers for cell C3. So that would be dollar symbol C, dollar symbol 3, if we wanted to lock our reference to the exchange rate. And another alternative we did was naming that exchange rate cell. We did that by selecting the cell and going to Formulas Name Manager, and we created a new one which we called exchange rate, and it's referring to cell C3 no matter what. Okay, so those are two ways that you can lock your reference to a cell, and by naming it you can make it a little easier to remember in your calculations. Okay, so we're done through 1 through 3. Let's move on to number 4, 5, and 6. These are going to involve linking cells and conditional formatting. And the first thing we want to do is link the exchange rate on the expense sheet. Okay, so we go to the expense sheet, we see we don't have anything calculated for our euro column, and that's because even though these cells are referencing cell B3, which is our exchange rate, there's nothing in that exchange rate column yet, or in that cell yet. Okay, so we could go to our revenue cell and say, well, we know the exchange rate is 1.35, and we could just type that in, and it would indeed give us the euro figures that we want. Okay, and that would work. However, if you need to come in the future and the exchange rate has changed and you want to update your budget, what you would have to do is you would have to go through and individually change each reference on each different sheet to the exchange rate. Okay, and you run a lot of risks there with missing one and having data that's incorrect, or having one say 1.35 and the other might say 1.45. It's a lot easier if you can just change one value and have it update across all your sheets. And so the easiest way to do that is to link the cells. Okay, and the easiest way to link a cell is to hit the equal sign and to select the cell that you want to link it to. Alright, so what that's going to do is it's going to make sure that our exchange rate on the expense tab is the same as the exchange rate on the revenue tab. And if we update our exchange rate on one tab, it's going to update it on our other tab as well. Okay, so it's a lot less work for us, and it ensures that we have accurate data across all of our budgets. Alright, so that's done. Next thing we want to do is link revenue minus expenses to get a net income check in US dollars. And this is on the net income page, okay, for 2001. So yours will look empty. What we're doing here is maybe we just want to double check the data after we've made our budget and ensure that none of the formulas or the information we entered was off. And so one way we can do that here is we're just going to create a quick check. Right, and what the instruction is supposed to do is link to revenue minus expenses, so we can make sure that these figures here are correct. So again, we're going to take the revenue from January 2001, and we're going to link to that. We're going to subtract the expenses from January 2001 and link to that, and hit enter. And we've got our check here. Okay, and as we can indeed see, this figure that is in the net income column is equal to our check. Right, so we can copy that formula down, and we could go through one at a time and check each of these figures to make sure they're the same. And we can actually see here that there are two that are not the same. But if we have lots and lots of figures, it's not going to be very efficient to look at them one by one. And so what we can do is we can create a check by using conditional formatting. Right, and this is asking us to create a check by highlighting equal values. Okay, so that's what we'll do. Right, so we will go to this cell here, and on our Home tab we can go up here to conditional formatting. Sorry, check this cell here. All right, we'll go to conditional formatting, and we'll go to create new rule. Okay, and we want to make sure that we highlight basically anything in this column that is equal to what we calculated for net income in column C. Okay, so we can look through our rule types, and what we'll do here is format only cells that contain, all right, and we want the cell value to be equal to what is over here. Okay, and we want the format to be yellow. Okay, so it did highlight it yellow, but if we try and copy and paste this down, it's not really going to do anything for us. Okay, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to manage my rules. And the one thing I want to change is that I can see here my cell value is locked, right? We've got those dollar symbols locked to this cell. So it's only going to highlight these cells if they have the same value as cell C6. All right? I don't want a locked value. I want to make sure that this cell is highlighted if it's the same value as this cell. All right? So what I'm going to do is unlock that cell value. Okay, so I'm just going to go to Edit Rule, and here, instead of C6 locked, I'm just going to get rid of those dollar signs. Okay, and I'm going to hit OK. And again, I'm going to say Apply, and OK. Okay, so now it did it for all of that column that I had selected, and I can see everywhere where the two columns are equal, it's highlighted, except in one instance where they are unequal. And this is an easy way for me to go through a lot of data and say, oh, well, something went wrong here. Here I have revenue from B11 minus expenses in B11. What do I have here? I have revenue from B11 minus expenses in B14. So I'd want to check that data and see where the mistake was and correct it. Okay, so that is creating a check using conditional formatting. Next, we'll move on to creating some charts. Charts can be really helpful when you have lots of information, especially when you need to present it succinctly. So the first thing we're going to do is create a simple column clustered chart for net income in 2001. Okay. So we'll go to net income, and what we'll do is we'll first just look at it in US dollars. Okay. So we know it's 2001. Let's highlight just the months and the dollar values. Okay, so we want the net income for each month in 2001. All right, so we've highlighted the months, we've highlighted the values we want. If we go up here to Insert and we go to Column, and if we just kind of hover over this, we see that this is our clustered column chart. So we click that. And Excel is going to give us a chart, a simple column cluster chart. All right, and it has each of the months, including spelling errors, and the value of the net income for that month. All right, easy enough. Now let's add a legend, title, and color. All right, and the point of this exercise is really just to get you comfortable with manipulating charts. Right, so when you have a chart and it's clicked on it, up here at the top you should have something that says Chart Tools, right? It's kind of loosely highlighted. And you've got 3 tabs there, Design, Layout, and Format. This gives you lots of options for manipulating a chart. All right, and under Layout you can see over here we indeed have an option to create a legend. Right, and we can show where that legend is and where it's located. So I'm going to put our legend on the bottom. Okay, ta-da! And it's just indicating that these little colored bars represent US dollars. If I wanted to put it over here on the side, since US dollars are located on the vertical axis, I could change that to the left. Okay. The next thing we wanted to do is create a title. Titles are pretty easy to manipulate. You can just double click on them, highlight them, and then change them to whatever you want. Okay, and then click off to change that title. We can, of course, also manipulate the format of these little bars. So if you just select one of the bars, if you double click it, it will just select that one bar. But if you select one at the very beginning, it will sort of select them all. And we can say format data series, and it's going to give us all sorts of options, including the fill of our bars. We can change the color, right? Let's make these green. Great. Okay. So that's just a little bit about creating a pie chart, or I'm sorry, adding a legend, title, and color. Okay, step 9, what we want to do is create a pie chart and a trend line. And we're going to do that with the same data as before. So we'll just kind of move this off to the side here. Again, we're going to select this information here, which is the months that we want for 2001, as well as the values. And we'll just go up again to insert, and this time we'll select pie chart. And we can make all sorts. We'll go ahead and make sort of a 3D pie chart here. Alright, and again, we've got a nice pie chart with each month color coordinated. It's not really that helpful here, although it does give us a little better sense of which months, like April, where we had the most net income. If we wanted to manipulate this again, we could change the title here. Right, we could also go to layout and change the legend. We can change the chart type if we want. We can change the data labels. Right? We can even click on individual pieces of this pie, and we can ask. We can change the fill color, border color, shades. These are just the way it looks. We can also add data labels. So if we actually want to know the dollar value for each of those pie pieces, they're in here. And as you can see, they're not always formatted in the most convenient of ways, but we can sort of move things around to make it easier to read. Okay, so that is our pie chart. The last thing we can do is we can create a trend line. Right, and we can do that by highlighting the data again, or if you just decide that you want a different type of chart. I guess we do need to create a new one. Alright, so we'll throw this off to the side as well. We've already got all this highlighted. And we've got lines here. We'll do a simple trend line. All right, and again, we can change the title. We can change the location of the legend. We can orient the axes all through these tabs up here in Chart Tools. Okay, so we've gotten through step 9. The last thing we're going to do is look at some basic formulas and a little bit more complex work. So we'll get a few of these done, and then the rest we'll finish up in the third video. Okay, step 10 is pretty simple. Sum totals for 2010 on the net income page. All right, so we're on net income. We actually want to sum these subtotals for 2010. Okay, so like before, we could just go through and say equals, and we could add each of these cells individually. And that will work fine, but it's going to take a lot of time. In this case, a much easier solution, since all of these cells are right next to each other, is to use a formula for sum. Right? And that's just going to give us the sum of whatever cells we select. And in this case, we're going to select sort of a range of cells. And you'll notice down here it's changed to Y10 when I select it. That's because I actually created in the name manager a reference to these 12 cells. Okay, so we just say sum all of those cells, hit enter, and it's actually going to give us the sum of the 2010 net income. Again, I can drag that formula over, and just want to double check. It's giving me sum of Y10. And in this case, there's a problem, right? Because I've used the name manager, it's not actually treated as a relative reference. It's treated as an absolute reference to these cells. So in this case, you have to be careful that when you use that name manager, you don't make that mistake. So we're going to